In this week's Quick Hack series, we're going to be discussing different ways to address plantar fasciitis. Plantar fasciitis, we hear it quite a bit. Maybe it's you, your neighbor, family member, somebody that's been into running a long time or standing on their feet for too long, and they start developing this pain down in their heel or somewhere in the bottom of their foot, and they are told they have plantar fasciitis. Well, you should probably figure out what that is before we even try and address a hack into the system. So plantar refers to the bottom portion of the foot, we'll say. And we've got fascia, which is this tissue that connects to everything in our body, including muscles. And it goes in and encapsulates the muscle, and it's just woven in and out. And in Latin, itis, that suffix, that refers to inflammation. So if you have fascia tissue and there's some itis involved, you've got inflamed tissue down there. And the fascia, or the plantar tissue, connects your heel bone, this being your left foot. If I did this here, I would show you this. This is your heel bone, and you got these longer bones here called the metatarsals. They come up to just where the toes begin up here. And these ends of the metatarsal bones are called heads. So you've got 5 metatarsal heads, and that's where the tissue from the heel comes up and attaches and makes the plantar tissue. And it kind of fans out to all 5 places. Now that tissue, it helps to create the arch, and it responds when the arch drops down by lengthening, kind of like a trampoline. If you've got a child dropping down in the middle of that trampoline, the tissue's going to lengthen and load, and then it'll shorten and spring that kid go flying through the air, hopefully with no net nearby, and it can feel how dangerous trampolines are. So what happens is when that arch drops, these lengthen, and when we push off and go for a run or a walk, then they should shorten too. Now, we could find the problem down here, but sometimes it may not be here. In fact, most of the time it's not here. It's based on how the body up above is balancing over the feet and affecting the tissue underneath the feet. For instance, if the body were to shift just a little bit off to one side, that's going to change the shape of the foot because the weight's shifting. And that's going to change the relationship of the tissue underneath. Now, if that person just habitually stays a little bit more off center over there and keeps that foot in a certain shape, and then they go for a run or a walk or go hiking or just stand on their feet all day, you might get a sense that that tissue underneath could get irritated because it's not being asked to do what it should. So there's 3 hacks we're going to try and drive into the system. One's actually going to deal with the plantar tissue. The other 2 are going to deal with further up the chain because it might not be happening down here. The issue could be in the tissues up above. So we're going to look at the calf and see if we can't give that an appreciation of length while at the same time seeing if we can load the entire body in a nice aligned position so that everything's more balanced. And then further up the chain, we've got the hamstring muscles. It'd be kind of nice if we could give that hamstring an experience of what it should do when lengthening and shortening. And that might affect how the calf behaves because the hamstring comes down and kind of weaves into the calf. And the calf comes down and attaches down to the heel, which coincidentally enough is where the plantar tissue feeds into and goes out to the feet. So it might be somewhere in that chain, but it could be somewhere else too. That's why these are hacks. We don't know where your problem is. We're just going to try and assume that maybe it's somewhere along here. And if it helps, great. Now, your neighbor who has plantar fascia issues, well, they may do these and not get the same results. That's because it may not be where the problem is. So we're going to try not to always treat the symptom. It would be nice if we could hunt down the problem, and that's where you can give us a call or set up an appointment and we can do just that. But in the meantime, let's try and hack into the system. Here's your first one. Well, the first hack is going to involve these little babies. These are called wedges, and they're made of foam, and I've got a couple of them because what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and give that plantar tissue an experience of how it should lengthen and load and then shorten back up. What we're going to do is we're going to place a wedge underneath the heel and another wedge underneath the front of the foot so that when we move onto it, it's going to allow greater space for this heel to drop down. Because sometimes people get plantar fasciitis who have flatter arches or more pronated feet. But that's not always the case. Sometimes people get plantar fasciitis who have very high rigid arches that don't get an experience of how to drop. So this is going to cover both ends of the spectrum. The flatter foot will be able to go deeper than a straight line, and the high arch will begin to experience what it's like to actually drop for the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these two, one right under the pad of my feet, not just my toes, and the other one just underneath the back of my heel. So the heel is encouraged to roll forward, dropping this part down, and this wedge is encouraging the front of my foot to drop down too. So in this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to just bend into my knee and bring weight onto that foot. Can you see how this area begins to drop as I do that? So all this tissue underneath is getting to experience lengthening and loading. And I might do this for, say, a minute or two, provided there's no real discomfort or pain. I might play around with where the wedge is. I might angle it slightly off to the side, just to give that foot an experience of dropping from the arch on down. All right, that's the first one. Next. The second hack is going to involve, well, another wedge, an inclined plane, only this time it's going to be much bigger. This one's made of plywood. Now, if you don't have one of these babies at home, well, of course, you can use a couple of books, something that you can kind of angle to create an inclined plane. You could even find a step that you can hang your heels off of while the upper foot or forefoot is resting on the top of the step. Because here's what we're going to do. We're going to just take the balls of my feet and toes and place them on this inclined plane. Now I'm going to hold on evenly with both hands, so I'm not going to be rotating anywhere. Be nice and balanced from left to right. And I'm going to make sure that both feet are even and pointing straight ahead. Now I'm going to also keep my head right over my shoulders over my hips, the hips directly above the knees, and the knees feeling that extended position directly in line and above the ankles. And I'm going to hold this here for maybe about a minute or so. And what we're doing, of course, is creating quite a stretch in the calf muscles of the lower legs. But we're doing so much more than that. We're also encouraging the plantar tissue to feel what it's like to lengthen while the calf muscles lengthen. And for that matter, the hamstrings and even along my spine. I'm aligning all of the load-bearing joints in my body so that I know how the muscles should behave when I'm tall and in proper posture. All right, here's number 3. The third hack into this system is dealing with the back of the thighs, those hamstring muscles that come down and affect the position of the knee, which will affect the position of the ankle and the shape of the foot. So if you have hamstring muscles that are restricted in their ability to properly lengthen and shorten, they may very well contribute to something further down or further up the chain. I'm just going to use this chair, and I'm going to place one foot upon the chair. The other leg is going to be my support leg, and I have my seat back here that I can hold on to for a little added stability. The leg that is on the chair with that foot, I'm going to encourage the roof of the foot to pull back toward me. That is going to encourage some length going down the back of my leg. Also, it'll encourage this knee to extend or straighten out, which is exactly what I want to have happen, because that will give me a little bit more length in those hamstrings. Also, what I'm going to do is gently externally rotate or roll the leg outward so that I can get pressure on the outside portion of the back of my heel. And I do want to feel the weight of this leg, the entire weight, pressing into the chair. I don't want to be light with it. I want to feel the heaviness of the weight of my leg in there. As I'm in this position, I'm going to take the same side arm of the leg that's up, and I'm going to reach my hand forward. But as I reach the hand forward, I'm not going to let my whole body go along for the ride. In fact, I'm going to try and push my rib cage ever so much back as the hand reaches forward. This is going to create this curve or flexion of my spine. It's also going to encourage the tailbone to kind of dip down a little bit as I do so. And that's going to give me a completely different sensation into those hamstrings. Not one that's typically burning and stretching, but one that's more lengthening and loading. And I might do that for about a minute. And I might explore the other leg to see if I get the same sensation. Chances are you're going to experience a different type of sensation from one leg to the other. And I guess the rule of thumb would be the one that you felt more restricted in might be the one you would want to spend a little bit more time making unrestricted so that it can balance it out. And there you have it. There's 3 ways to hack into the system to try to create maybe a better foot shape to reduce the strain and inflammation that is occurring in that plantar tissue. Now, this may not be for every person that suffers from the symptom of plantar fasciitis because it is a symptom, it's not a problem. The problem could be that somebody slipped and fell on one hip and they shifted their weight off that side and that changed their foot shape. It could be that somebody sprained an ankle many years ago that changed the way in which they walk, and then finally the plantar tissue has just had enough. It could be that somebody wrenched their back while reaching into the laundry machine and tweaked it, and now the way in which they stand has affected the way their feet are feeling. Maybe the back pain's gone away, but now the plantar tissue is being affected, especially after a run or a long walk. So these are just hacks. They're not necessarily solutions, but if they happen to help, well, all the better. If you want to hunt down the problems and figure out why it is they're feeling the way they are, just give us a call. We'd be happy to help.